Rafa is back. He won his first match against Dominic Thiem in Brisbane 7-5, 6-1. And they have called him Weak Dal. They have called him Clay Dal. And Nadal is back to prove a point, which is that he's one of the greatest players that's ever stepped foot on the tennis court. See, what happens in the tennis world is the following. When you stop winning or when you're simply not playing and other players are doing well, people write you off. This is happening to Federer. I mean, Federer's been retired for a while now, and I'm guessing that this will happen to Djokovic too. Once he starts losing, people are gonna write them off. People are predicting horrible results for Nadal. They're saying that he's gonna start losing early, that he's not gonna make it into the top 10 and so on. Rafael Nadal is one of the greatest players in the history of the game. Now let's just make up a scenario for those people that have nicknamed Nadal Clay Dal. And let's say that Nadal didn't have his clay results. He would still be regarded as one of the greatest players in the history of tennis. He would be in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. His career without the clay results would equal players like Becker, Edberg, Landl, and McEnroe. Now, interestingly, in Brisbane, the court is incredibly fast, and people thought that he was going to struggle with the fast surface. But I want to remind you that the genius coach, Tony Nadal, made Rafa play challengers when Rafa was still a teenager in Germany on carpet, one of the most genius moves that I've ever seen any coach do. And what do you think happened to Nadal in those tournaments? He was winning those tournaments. He is more than capable of playing on fast surfaces. He, after all, made it to 5 Wimbledon finals. Now, Rafa's last injury was very serious because it was his left hip that was injured, which affects his open stance forehand and his closed stance backhand. But Rafa's open stance forehand is probably the most important shot in his arsenal. And look, I thought that Nadal was going to struggle in his first match. I actually thought that he might lose to Dominic Thiem. And I'm going to talk about Dominic Thiem's career at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned. But I can tell you that I was so positively surprised because in the very first game, Dominic Thiem hit like a loopy high ball to Rafa's forehand. And Rafa hit a forehand winner close to the middle of the court. He hit that thing so fast, even though the ball was so close to Dominic, he had no chance to get it back. And guys, that is how you play a high forehand. Now, I have an episode coming out very soon in the 10-day tennis transformation with Felipe. We worked on a high forehand, and I know a lot of you guys are struggling with the shot, and this video will be very helpful to you. But back to the Nadal Thiem match, that first game was very revealing because Nadal was serving. And right off the bat, I noticed an improved toss location. So what happened often in the past with Nadal's serve is that his toss would drift to 1 o'clock. Now he's lefty, so it's the opposite for right-handers. And because his toss was too far to the right, he would lose balance as he landed on his serve. Now watching him serve in this match, his toss was more between 12 and 11 o'clock, right in that slot. And he perfectly maintained his balance on the serve, and he was serving exceptionally well. I think this is going to be one of the keys for Rafa in his comeback to get as many free points as possible on his serve. But not only that, when he gets a lot of first serves in, he can dominate with his forehand, and he's going to have to run less. Now, speaking of running, I was very worried how Nadal would run after having had hip surgery. And by the way, I'm very thankful for the Spanish surgeon that operated on Rafa, because the first drop shot that Thiem hit in the third game, Rafa sprinted to it. He did look a little bit tentative as he was getting to the ball, but then he did one of his signature angled feel winners close to the net, something that Rafa doesn't get enough credit for. He has unbelievable hands around the net. Now at 2-all in the first set, the match started getting more heated, and there were some baseline rallies where Rafa's physicality was tested, and on one particular point he had to play 2 really tough backhands. Now remember, the injury was on his left hip, so I'm more worried about Rafa defending from the forehand side than the backhand side. However, on close stance backhand where Rafa plays it off his left foot, this could be a potential danger to his hip. And in this particular rally, Rafa had to really fight hard to retrieve the balls back in play. He hit 1 open stance backhand, hit 1 close stance, and he ended up winning this point with a little angled cross-court backhand passing shot. So it appears from watching this match that Rafa's body is holding up. The level of the first set was very high. Dominic Thiem was playing well, and at 4-all there was a rally where Rafa hit a bouncing overhead and charged the net and hit one of his signature angled backhand cross-court volleys for a winner. There was a point at 15-all, at 4-all, the very long rally where Rafa started running around his backhand very far on the backhand side. That's another thing that I was worried about because that's a very important shot in Rafa's arsenal, having the ability to dominate with his forehand. When he was younger, he could hit a forehand pretty much from anywhere in the court, even from the doubles alley on his backhand side. So in this particular point at 4-all, 15-all, I saw Rafa running around his backhand beautifully, and he was ripping forehands quite comfortably. Rafa played an exceptional game at 5-all where he hit back-to-back aces, again ran around his backhand very comfortably, hitting aggressive forehands. He played some really clutch points, being up 6-5 and breaking Dominic Thiem to win the first set 7-5. Now in the second set, Dominic Thiem's level dropped a little bit and Rafa was all over him, and he won the second set very comfortably, 6-1. So what can we take out of this match? I think Rafa's body is at a very good level. Now he wasn't tested. It's going to be interesting to see when he plays the more high caliber players like Medvedev, Sinner, Alcaraz and Djokovic, how his body would hold up then, because those guys are going to give him less free points than Dominic Thiem did in this particular match. His body is obviously holding up in these rallies, but what I'm worried about is when he has to do one rally after another for 3, 4, or maybe even 5 hours. Is he capable of doing that? That's the big question mark, because ultimately that might be necessary to win a Grand Slam. And look, what I've seen in my own game and working with other players is that when you're out for a long time, the first match back or the first practice back is generally the best. So I do expect a dip from Nadal. Maybe in the second match he plays Kubler next round, which I expect him to comfortably take out. But generally what I see from players is that the adrenaline is pumping when you come back. You just are so happy to be back on the tennis court and you're playing well. But then once you get out there again the second, third, fourth time, the reality of you not having played kicks in and you start playing much worse. Now whether that's going to be the case for one of the GOATs, probably not. I think Rafa has a legitimate chance to win this tournament. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Rafa starts playing some poor matches, maybe even in Brisbane, or goes out early in the Australian Open. But guys, I cannot tell you how happy I am that Rafa is back. The year 2024 is going to be so exciting. There are so many players that are back. For example, Anisimova, I just watched her play. She's back. Saka is back. She won her first round. Kerber won a doubles match. She's playing really well. Raducanu is back. Now Rafa is back in the mix. We have the Olympics. I think 2024 is going to be one of the most epic tennis years ever. Can Djokovic hang on to the throne? Is he going to continue to win everything? He's playing well at the United Cup. He seems to be doing exactly what he was doing in 2023. And let me just quickly talk about Dominic Thiem, because a lot of people are wondering what happened to him. He played a full year last year on tour and he's only ranked 97 in the world. At one point, Dominic Thiem had the fastest forehand in the world. It was measured at the Australian Open. He was going deep in Master Series tournaments. He was going deep in Grand Slams, reaching many Grand Slam finals and winning the US Open. And after his injury, he's just simply not the same player. Now, the problem is not so much in Dominic Thiem's technique. I cannot detect any problems with range of motion in his wrist. The forehand looks exactly the same the way it looked before his injury. I cannot see any technical differences on his backhand either. The serve looks the same also. So what is the difference? Well, his confidence is shattered. Even in this match against Nadal, you can see that when he was serving to stay in the set, being 5-6 down, he served a double fault, and he also missed a super easy sitter forehand with the entire court open on set point. So these are the type of things that don't show up in the stat sheets. These are the small little details that determine whether you win a set or lose a set. Now also, because he just simply doesn't have confidence in his game, once he lost that first set, he started playing a lot worse in the second set. Now he has to carry this over into the next tournament, where he's probably going to lose again, and then into the next tournament. So it's a vicious cycle that I don't wish upon anybody. All it takes is to have one good tournament, get some confidence, and carry that confidence over into other tournaments, and now you can start climbing the rankings and play a lot better. So that's what I'm hoping for Thiem, that he starts to put some wins together where he wins consecutive matches, where he can build his confidence and get back into at least the top 30 or top 20 in the world, because I do believe that this is where he belongs. He's a phenomenal player. No, the game has not passed him by. Look how Nadal is playing. Has the game passed by Nadal? No. Has the game passed by Djokovic? No. Thiem, with his game style, is still highly capable of being in the mix to win big tournaments, and it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm very hopeful that he's going to be able to do it this year.